all of the elements. You cannot be in the form of matter without having earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And Chinese medicine adds metal and wood, and I'm not getting into that because that's not my thing. But we are all our own, not only unique combination of these elements, but our unique expression of these elements. And the expression of those elements are gonna also shift throughout a person's life, throughout the seasons, throughout where they live, throughout their lifestyle, and throughout their age. All of these things are affecting how these elements are dancing within your body. So I'm focusing on Vata, and I'm going to get to why, but let's just specifically cover what Vata does in the body. Vata is responsible for all movement in the body. So the obvious one, as you said, would be the breath and the lungs. The second thing, or another thing that Vata is responsible for is all the nerve impulses, the ability of the nerves to do their proper communicative process through the synapses. Peristalsis in the body. You don't have to think about moving the food through your body. It's done automatically. Vata has its home both in the lungs and in the colon. The colon is this pretty much empty tube, right? And so air is always in that tube, hence why we fart. And the lungs and the nervous system. These are primary organs that are associated with Vata. Emotionally, Vata is the ability to be very flexible, to be able to sort of like the wind, change on a dime, get really inflated, get really quiet, be a gentle breeze, be a hurricane, depending on how it's balanced or not balanced. When Vata is out of balance, some people like the word deranged. Dr. Laud never liked to use that word, so I stay away from it, even though I think it's a great word. When the air ether quality is aggravated in the body, what do you think you're going to start experiencing physically? What would be some physical symptoms that you could imagine you would have from what we've already discussed, what it's doing?
I feel like constipation.
Right, so it's drying the colon, so constipation, yep.
Nervousness and anxiety and maybe hyperactivity or unfocused mental processes.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Be like a lack of proprioceptive awareness.
It would mess with one's ability to perceive properly, certainly. How about sleep?
Not something about insomnia.
Yeah, we really mess with the sleep patterns. So it's going to mess with the digestion, it's going to mess with sleep, it's going to make one feel ungrounded, uncentered, unfocused. Any kind of nervous twitching, like, I don't know, I used to get like a twitch in my eye here, and I knew, oh, I'm getting out of balance. You know, or sometimes you get like a tick somewhere, any kind of numbness. Let me make sure I'm covering everything. So also, as I made reference to, you're gonna have a drying of the skin, a drying of the hair, a drying of the nails, a drying of everything that's juicy in the body. If we're not tending to the kapha, to the earth, water element in the body, then we're gonna start drying up. And this is what naturally happens to us with age. Excuse me, so Vata is also tied in with elderly people. We see them drying up, we see their bones getting brittle. And we see, you know, osteoporosis is gonna be a Vata. We might see, you know, elders tend to sleep less. They don't tend to digest as well. They tend to get more anxious. There might be weakness in the lungs. They don't breathe as deep. You know, there's more shallow breathing. So these are all like clear examples of how we see Vata expressing itself in people, particularly the elderly, right?
And would that mean there's a lack of or an over amount?
Both.
Okay, right.
Both.
It's
If
gotta
you're
be
not
balanced.
nourishing the other elements in the body, then there's gonna be a lack of those and an increase of the one that's expressing. So we live in a very Vata climate. It's cold a lot of the times, it's windy a lot of the time, it's dry most of the time, it's big, it's open, it's airy, it's high elevation, it's desert. So just by living in New Mexico, we're exposed to too much Vata, okay? So really important just for us in general to have that understanding and to learn how we can nourish it back into balance. One of the most clear ways that you will know that you're having a Vata imbalance is that you're gonna feel ungrounded, unfocused. You're gonna feel anxiety. Okay, these are gonna be indications of the Vata element being out of balance. So why in postpartum? So regardless of a woman's constitution, when the womb is filled with the baby, and now the baby's gone out, that womb is like a big open balloon. And what's the first element that's gonna come in? Air. It's just pure mechanics. Now, once we start getting deeper into the protocol, yes, you're gonna have to do some fine tuning, particularly with Pitta. And mothers that might be Pitta and now they're having maybe a summer baby, you might have to do some adjusting, but across the board, no matter what, that womb has a bunch of air that's come into it. There's no way around that. And if you don't escort the air out of the body, then it starts traveling deeper into the tissue. Now, what would you say are some of the most common postpartum issues that we see?
Depression.
Anxiety,
Probably definitely insomnia as well.
lack of sleep, and very often, digestive issues. Now, the digestive issues comes from a number of things. For one, all the women's organs have just been crammed up in here for months, and now immediately, like literally, they just drop, okay? No matter how healthy you are, that's a major change. And each one of the digestive organs are known to have their own fire, which is called Agni. Agni is the Pitta part of the body. Agni is the ability of each organ to transmute nutrients into something useful to the cell. So the stomach has an Agni, the liver has an Agni, the small intestine has an Agni, the large intestine has an Agni, the gallbladder has an Agni. All the organs that are involved in digestion have their own fire base, and they can all get thrown off, especially due to this like smush drop. If that if that fire just comes back blazing because now it's got air blowing on it, it's gonna dry up all the nutrients. It's like burning toast, right? Burning your food, there's nothing in it. If the Agnis become sluggish, it's not gonna process the food. It's gonna be like uncooked blocky bread that didn't cook in the middle. So getting all of these fires to get rekindled appropriately is a huge part of the mother's ideal healing coming online. If those fires are not tended to, that can follow them through the rest of their lives. If they have no understanding of this, they could end up with digestive disorders that literally follow them through the rest of their lives. Now, if you're not able to give your cells the nutrients that it's needed, there's a myriad of problems that develop from that. So not only is it important that we're like addressing, that we're getting these fires back online, not only are you preventing the mother from having problems throughout her life, you can actually even be correcting in this time issues that were never addressed before, because her body just went through something it's never gone through ever, assuming their first time, but even onward. And there's such a tenderness in this time that it's an opportunity to really get things back into balance. Now, as I heard expressed, I can't remember, one of you in your share of, I think it was you, like, really this thing of like, there's so much focus on the birth, and then the focus goes immediately to the baby, and really, there's really not a cultural, in this culture, holding of what happens after. And if you are to talk to any OGBYN, if you were to look up all the statistics around it, there are more problems postpartum than there are pregnancy or with the birth. And regardless of whether it's been a traumatic birth, a difficult birth, that woman's body is going through a major change. Even if she's had a bunch of kids, it doesn't matter. That particular window is very, very specific. And in the Vedas, it will even say the mother is as sensitive as her newborn. Now that could be interpreted in lots of different ways. She's as sensitive as her newborn in that her body's going through something completely new. But there's also this beautiful sensitivity about the Vata to where she has this capacity to open up to the universal love. Because in that time for a woman, that gateway between where we come from and coming here is being expressed through birth. We don't know where our souls necessarily come from, but we do know that it incarnates into a physical body that comes through the woman's body. And that's extraordinary. And to not tend to that, to not give her a container to be able to like bring in this universal love into her womb, into her being, and thinking about what that does for the quality of motherhood. To be given that opportunity to be held in a closed container where she's being completely nourished, not asked to do a million household things or go back to work, and to hold that container, and also for the baby, stay home, stay quiet, and let your community tend and love on you. This is so radical for our culture, and it's difficult. It's difficult to convince women that this is necessary. I struggle with it, of just like, please give yourself this time, as much of it as you can. 42 days feels like a lot. It even feels like a lot when you're in it, but 6 weeks in your entire life and journey of becoming a mother is nothing. It's nothing. And the benefit that can be obtained in this 42-day sacred window can last a woman a lifetime. I've always found it kind of puzzling that, like, in India, there's so much worshiping of all these different forms of the Divine Mother, right? But there's not very much respect for the women. The women in the 3D don't really get, and yet still, even within that, and I don't know how much that changed with the colonization of the British coming and creating caste system. I'm still not clear like how much of that happened with the Brahmins, you know, coming together with the colonizers, or how much of that was already in place. But even within a culture that doesn't necessarily hold their women in the highest regard, they still had the wisdom to make sure that they were nurtured in that first 6-week window. So I find, and then they work really hard, and they work pretty endlessly being in service. And so even with, a lot of help, becoming a parent is huge, and it does take a village, and we don't have a village. We're learning how to figure out ways to reclaim village for ourselves. But unfortunately, what usually ends up happening is that a woman is left alone to tend to this baby without having a lot of holistic alternative wisdom to guide her.
And the father too.
And the father too. Absolutely. So this protocol can truly, truly change the paradigm. And the education of that, I know for myself personally, there was a real push of like, my mother was like, I was back to work in a month, and very proud of that. And there is a real stoicness among the older generation of women of like, well, I was able to get back up and do stuff. And my response has been, well, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And there can be a number of ways in which our culture really has pushback and won't really honor the truth of what this is. And yet, if you go into the statistics of what happens to women that don't get properly cared for in some manner, don't take some time for themselves, it shows in there. And so Isha would say 42 days through menopause. Like, if you can take care of yourself in those 42 days, and not just take care of yourself, but to receive this particular protocol, it can last you till menopause. And then maybe you want to address it again. And it needs to be done for every newborn birth. Like, just because a mother got postpartum care the first time doesn't mean she doesn't need it the second. And if she didn't get it the first time, she's gonna need it even more for the second and the third. It never ends because of that just pure mechanical fact that when the fetus, the baby, leaves the womb, air comes in. And if the air is not guided out of the body, it's going to create issues. It's going to create health issues. Okay, any questions at this point or comments? Okay.
How do you spell Agnes?
Agni is A-G-N-I, and Agni is a god of fire as well. So Agni is connected to the sun, it's connected to the Pitta dosha.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
I remember my cousin Nicole, she had her second kid. She's been pregnant for years. I visited her in France, and she calls me 3 weeks later. I'm pregnant. She had her second kid recently. She lives in France. She got 6 months leave,
Yeah,
paid.
yeah.
Do we even get? Is that traditional in America for women to get?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
And there's a
2 weeks.
a fight
2
and a
weeks.
push
Well, they get 6. I think they get 6 weeks.
toward it. I mean, Jesse's
I guess
in a
it depends.
position where his place is giving him leave to
Right.
take care of.
Depends on the
To
So I've
be
been at
with
the
the
same company
family.
for 10 years.
Yeah.
Right.
If like they start with like 3 weeks for paternal leave, but then
Which is
for
incredible.
maternal leave, yeah,
It's a
pretty
big
good.
step.
Pretty
It's a
good.
big step, and I think my point is that it's becoming more of an accepted trend,
Yeah.
But Europe has always had a better
Yeah.
healthcare system.
Oh,
period.
yeah, because
Her lifestyle.
they know that if you have healthy family, you have healthy citizens.
Healthy economy.
You have healthy
Yeah.
society,
Yeah.
right? Like, nothing's separate like that, And if you have a mom who's strong and cared for, she not only has the knowledge, but she has the energy and the wisdom that comes in from that time period to take care of her family properly.
Hi. Welcome.
Welcome.
Hi.
There's room here.
Oh, someone new.
That's our friend. You've met her. Just say hi again. Sage. Oh, stop it. Come here. Come here. Hey, Sage. Here, hold my hand, Grace. See?
Hi, we're friends.
Yeah, we're good. See? Okay.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
So I've recorded what you've missed, and we can find a way to make sure you get that information. And maybe when we're done, you could catch us up with the intro that we did in the beginning as well. Okay, so from what we know of Ayurveda, how do we tend to something that's out of balance?
By bringing in the elements and energies of what is more dominant.
Or more opposite?
Or more opposite, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the obvious, well, how are we gonna tend to cold?
Warm.
How are we gonna tend to dry?
Water.
Water and oil,
Or oil.
moisture.
Moisture. There we go.
How are we
All
gonna
encompassing
tend
word.
to the erraticness,
Routine.
routine, repetitiveness?
Rest.
Yes,
Yin.
rest as opposed to going, doing,
Mhm.
running around. The light energy of Vata. Dark, and then also in weight, to bring heavy in,
Yeah.
right?
Even like weighted blankets and like
Yeah,
physical way.
swaddling,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, wrapping,
Mm.
container, right?
Sheepskin.
Sheepskin.
Boots with the
That like
fur.
makes me think about, like womb sashes
Uh-huh.
too.
Yeah.
That like after like postpartum, I wonder if that helps keep the heat in.
Keeps the heat in, it helps the organs,
Mm.
because they're, as we talked about, that they're going through this drop. So everything in this protocol is to bring Vata down, and we do it through lifestyle. So the most obvious things are food. What foods? And one of the things that is just so spectacular in an Ayurvedic understanding is the use of spices. We have spices that are heating, we have spices that are cooling, we have spices that are pungent, sweet, astringent, bitter, all of these things. All of the tastes nourish different tissues in the body. So typically in Ayurveda, you want your diet to consist of all the tastes. When we're working specifically to bring down the Vata dosha, we're going to avoid astringent and bitter, because those increase the Vata. They're cold by nature, they're drying by nature. So we're going to lean into warming, sweet, salty, and even some sour.
I just want to comment on that. Like, I was just recently, I got some persimmons, and I was like, oh, can I put those in the postpartum thing? And then I looked it up, and they're like, no, persimmons are super astringent.
Yeah,
So actually, even if you heat them up,
Right.
they're still astringent.
right,
So I didn't put them in.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have found if you want to know what astringent is, you eat the skin of an unripe persimmon and you will have no question.
Yeah.
But when you let them come to full ripeness, they don't have, the skin is what's real astringent, and the insides are real juicy and can be sweet, but it would be debated.
Yeah, the internet was like, no.
Yeah. Well, good, I'm glad the internet had that.
But I was definitely like, I don't know, like, it seems like a good idea in
Yeah.
the store, but then I got home.
Yeah.
So can you repeat that then? So we want to lower the Vata, we want warming, sweet, sour, and
Salty.
salty.
Not bitter or astringent.
No bitter, not astringent.
A little bit sour, you said. Not a lot of sour, yeah.
Little bit of sour.
What about pungent?
Pungent to a degree. So, for instance, you have the pungency of a chili, And then you have the pungency of fresh ginger. And then you have like the pungency of garlic and onion. And then there's the pungency of like cardamom and cumin and cinnamon. So it has its degree. And we don't go as far as like chilies. Ginger is a really interesting one because when it's dry, it's incredibly pungent and it stays pungent throughout the body. But fresh ginger is what Ayurveda calls prabha, which gets translated into it just is. And fresh ginger will have this thing where while it's pungent, its post-digestive effect on the body is actually not as heating, it's cooling. And then garlic, there's one specific way that we use it Ayurvedically in postpartum, and I'm going to teach you that when we get into food stuff. So that brings us to the Abhyanga. So the reason why the Abhyanga is so profound is, for one, we're using 4 ounces of warm sesame oil, and sesame is very heating, in a very specific, repetitive, rhythmic way. So 4 ounces of oil in 1 massage. The oil is hot through the entire massage. And I shouldn't even call it massage because it's not. It's Abhyanga, which means oleation therapy. It's not massage. And I really am gonna keep drilling that for you because you're not doing what you're trying to do with massage. Completely different approach. And what's very specific and why we're doing this class is that you're going to learn this thousands of year old dance tradition as to how to apply this oil in a way that has been, I want to say channeled, but created, that will get vata out of the body. And it's the same exact massage, ideally every single day for 42 days. Granted, that rarely happens in our culture. Molly might get the benefit of that because you're in a container where you're going to be able to perhaps do that. Typically in India, you had certain grandmas and aunties who were just taught it, and they would take care of all the women in their village. And the women just received that. They stay in a a ghee-lit room with their newborn, and they're brought food, and they're brought Abhyanga warm oil massage every single day, and specific herbal blends, and all they're supposed to do is be with their baby and meditate and receive, take warm baths, and read spiritual text. That's the protocol in its purest form.
Oh, it makes me want to live in a functional village.
I know, and I would like to just say we're moving back into becoming one, and we're gonna have to do it in our modern way. But that really is the beauty of this, is that we have the ability to emulate it, and it's just really a matter of prioritizing it. And I will tell you that if it's prioritized and you can touch as many women as possible with this, it changes so much. First of all, it gives them the wisdom of how to bring themselves and the family back into balance. Because you start to identify it like, oh, we're not sleeping very well, and we're going so hard that like our digestion is being affected, and you can see how just the modern lifestyle will start amping up in its, vata derangement, truly, and also like watching the screen where there's constantly something new flashing in front of the eyes, driving around everywhere, busy every moment of the day. These all aggravate vata. We live in a very, very vata culture. So knowing what to do to bring that back down is one of the best tools you have for optimal health. And I've had many of my families say, oh yeah, when we're spinning out of control, we eat kitschy for a week and everything normalizes again. You know? And then some families will take it to the point where we make sure the house is nice and warm and we rub oil all over each other. And then we all get in the hot bath and we all sleep amazing.
Mhm.
And all the like freak out that's happening just goes.
Mhm.
So you're teaching families right from the get-go the difference and the skills, even just through kitchery, which is mung bean and rice and Ayurvedic spices. How to bring things back around again.
Regulate your nervous system.
How to regulate your nervous system. Yeah, how to get the adrenals to like settle back in.
It feels like lighting is such, I do like design and stuff as well, and like ambiance is always number one.
Yeah.
And it's like so much overstimulation when there's so much lighting, especially the lighting that we have so used now.
Yeah.
So like, I guess it's like tapping back into going down with the sun as well.
Yeah.
The lighting when the sun goes out.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, the last 3 days I've had my fire and just been doing that light at night. It's been fucking good.
It's so good. So good for the primal body to be like, oh yeah.
Do you guys want this light off?
It's kind of nice to see faces at the moment.
Yeah, that's not too bad. Thank you though.
As
For
yours.
that offer.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
I'm thinking a lot about that, and you can actually get red lights.
Mhm.
Halogens are better than LEDs for the circadian. You could get red lights around your house, and these cost a few dollars.
Yeah.
They have the red light panels, and of course fire.
I'm a big
traditional
fan
red
of
light.
candles too.
Candle.
You,
I
you
mean-
mentioned ghee.
So ghee is flammable. And what ghee is a major part of this protocol. Why? Well, for one, it's heavy and oily. It kindles Agni. Super important that way. None of the other cooking oils, it will never go rancid, so you can cook things at high heat. The sad fact of it is that cooking with any other oil is likely gone rancid when you cook with it. That's even things that are considered high heat, it's really debatable. Ghee will not go rancid with high heat. So it's a really preferred cooking oil.
You mentioned it in the context of lighting.
Right. So the way they have used it traditionally in India is they'll take a cotton ball and they'll turn it into like what looks like a Hershey's Kiss, and they'll set it in the middle of an oil lamp that has ghee in it, and they'll light it, and it'll just burn. It'll just burn and burn and burn. And the quality of light that it gives off is supposed to be very, very healing for the pineal gland. And that was traditionally what they did. So what I do is that occasionally I mess up and I burn my ghee, and I save it and I use it as a ghee lamp so that it's not a complete waste because it's expensive. It's really sad when you burn it. So you can't use that internally, but you can use it for lighting.
And could you
Yeah.
burn sesame oil? And all that?
Not that I'm aware
Do you make your own ghee?
of. I do, and I'll teach you how to do that because it's really,
I feel like that's like one of the things I want to learn is to make my own.
yeah, we'll definitely do that. So so the food is important in this protocol, equally as important as the Abhyanga, and a lot more obtainable. Not everyone knows the Abhyanga, not everybody has access to it, but the foods are really important. So one of the most amazing parts of this protocol is that if the mother will follow the protocol, which means avoiding certain foods and favoring other foods during this 42-day window, the quality of her milk is affected. This is something that the medical world will often debate. I don't understand how that can be debated. It's pretty well known that you don't use onion, garlic, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, in the first couple months because it makes the baby gassy. So that's still true in this protocol with the exception of garlic, and we'll get into that when we do some cooking stuff. But those foods, every midwife, no matter what they've trained in, will advise their clients not to use those foods for a good month or so. And I would say 6 weeks. Okay?
I wonder what's Italians do.
Yeah.
I did put garlic in the.
Those ones ago.
Onion, garlic, cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts.
Any
Those are all-
any brassica.
All the brassicas with the exception of kale.
Oh, kale's okay.
Kale's okay.
So the sulfurous, cruciferous vegetables make
Sulfurous,
fart, too much
yes.
air,
Yes.
and just not good for the baby.
Not good for the baby.
Okay.
So this protocol is ensuring that the mother's milk is the highest of digestibility and has a quality to prevent colic. And colic is a nightmare. Colic is a nightmare. So colic is what they call it when a baby is screaming inconsolably for hours. And that can happen to the point where it will stop a parent from being able to bond with their baby. Because right from the get-go, they feel like, I'm a crappy parent, I don't know what to do to get this child to stop screaming.
And then you have shaking
And
baby
then
syndrome.
And right, shaking
But-
baby syndrome, seriously, like,
It's you go
you're
crazy.
sleep deprived
Yeah.
and your baby's just screaming and nothing you do is stopping it. I mean, that, and then typically you don't have somebody giving you a break from it either, you know? So colic has two dimensions to it. There's the colic that is digestive, which means the mother's diet is producing milk that the baby can't digest and the baby is just physically uncomfortable. Typically, that will be expressed by the baby pulling their knees up because if you know anything about yoga, this relieves gas. So you'll have a baby that's just kind of like doing this a lot and screaming, like they're crouching and they're just, you know, and maybe they're even passing a lot of gas, but I mean, I'm sure all of you have experienced a gas bubble that can be so painful, you think like something is majorly wrong. And it's just a little pocket of air that's lodged somewhere in there that's creating like excruciating pain. So this protocol eliminates that. That will not happen if this protocol is followed. And that alone can save a relationship. It could save a family. It can save
A baby.
it saves so much problem.
Wow.
Now there is another type of colic, and this, they didn't talk about this in the Ayurvedic model, but it's gotten acknowledged in the modern model, which is that some babies are so sensitive that they get overstimulated and they just freak out. There's just so much stimulation, like lighting, let's say, or they're driving around in the car too much, or there's too many people like in their space interacting. And those babies are the ones, like you'll hear a mother say, yeah, my baby was screaming and they would only stop when you turned on the vacuum. And you're thinking, what? Well, because the vacuum sound is numbing out everything else. Or we'd have to put them on the dryer. So some kind of white noise that was blocking out all the other stimulant was what the baby needed to calm down.
I've heard
And
noise machines are
Noise
really good to
machines,
have.
yeah, and so that's just a personality thing. I mean, some children, let's say, who have like a lot of air in their chart are probably perceiving way too much information and they just don't know what to do with it, and it's just like screaming, you know? So that's a very different thing. And again, I would say if your goal is to stay home and stay quiet for 42 days in a low lit room without a bunch of people coming to, like, it's one thing to have people visit, to come in for, you know, an hour and help out, do some laundry, do some dishes, you know, see if you need anything, hang out with your baby while you go take a shower, that kind of thing. But to have people just coming and holding the baby and interacting and talking really loud and you know, lots of conversation and having like a party, which happens. You know, the whole family wants to come have a party, and that baby's just like picking up all kinds of energetics. Some constitutions, some astrology is just not going to do well with that. Some babies might, but some may not.
Yeah, I wonder if it might be in a big family,
Yeah,
if that's something
yeah.
that's prevalent.
I mean, it's interesting because I've really seen like in big families, you know, the mother's pregnancy, she's got kids screaming around her all the time and it's muffled in there, you know, or dogs barking, and when that baby comes out, they're totally immune to it. Usually usually the youngest child of a big family will sleep through anything. They've heard it right from the beginning, the mom screaming at the kids and the kids screaming, and it's like comforting to them.
Yeah.
You know, but every once in a while you get a child that's not, they need more sheltering. So, you know, it's very different. And I do not want to send the message that if you don't do this protocol, you're doomed to have a colicky baby.
Yeah.
That's not the case. But I will just say, if you do this protocol, there's like a 98% chance that you're going to eliminate those issues just by being quiet. You know, so it's really good to educate moms and our families on that before they have babies so that they can plan that time. So that they can say, well, we're gonna have one guest a day and, you know, you can come for an hour and we're not really socializing, and please just, you know, if you wanna help us, please like come and help us. Bring some appropriate foods, help out with some of the stuff, because inevitably if mom is sitting home by herself and the laundry's piling up, she's gonna do it. The dishes are piling up, she's gonna do it. And while that might be okay 2 or 3 weeks out, if they're forced to do it right from the get-go, they're gonna. And that's not the kind of care we're trying to provide. So often the feedback that I've gotten from this protocol is that it is so above and beyond the level of yummy nourishment that anybody ever even knew was possible. It's just so much more than what our culture ever allows. And, you know, the mothers the families that really allot for this and really do it will have incredible testimonials of just how deeply beneficial, how much they appreciated it, how much they know it was just foundational for them getting a really good start in things. All right. Any questions or comments at this point?
I have a question about like the lighting, so like, should we get like more like blackout curtains type thing?
I think it's good to have one room that you can go to. I don't notice that babies necessarily need that, and they need sunlight as well. You know, introducing them to the sun and letting them get some sunlight is important, but it's nice to have a dark room with just a candle in it that you spend some time in, you know, and some like, to be conscious of the lighting so that you can be like reading and doing stuff, but like blue light from technology. I don't like to be a fear monger, but I am very, very concerned about how technology might be affecting babies and children. Even just like carrying cell phones on your body while you're pregnant or having the computer in front of you. I think it's really important to pay attention to that. You know, things like selenite are supposed to help, and shungite are known to help with like the EMFs. I think, you know, wearing like a shungite bracelet can be really helpful. But I cringe when I see people giving their children technology as a way to calm them down. And I could talk on and on about that, but I just like to throw it out there because I think it's important, but I'm not gonna go on a whole soapbox about it. If people wanna know more, you can look it up online. There are doctors and research and things coming out that are saying it's quite possible that the increase of autism is also connected to the increase of electromagnetic energy everywhere. It's too much for these fragile nervous systems that are developing. And we don't know. And the research that's been done is not good. I mean, it shows that it's problematic. And, you know, so I think that's something to just be really aware of, and it's a sensitive topic. I mean, what do you do if you have a mother that's working online, or what if you are doing your work online and she needs a break and you have the baby with you? Like, just don't blindly sit with your baby on your lap and technology around you. Just try to be, try to turn off the internet at night. Just try to be aware of that. I think it's a real issue. And the subtleties are the things that aggravate vata. So things like caffeine and tobacco and alcohol and cannabis and pharmaceuticals, they have a subtlety, which means that they can travel very, very deep into the system. And subtlety is a quality of vata. It's ethereal, right? That's the other quality we forgot. So being really mindful of that. Caffeine, all forms of caffeine. So these are all things that we obviously would try to avoid. Postpartum, that includes cacao. And again, it's just 6 weeks. It's not the rest of your life. It's just 6 weeks. But I know, a lot of times people want to bring their new moms some really groovy cacao treat and this and that. And while it might be fine and the mom might really crave and love that, you might end up with a fussy baby who doesn't want to sleep.
Would the baby get some of that
Absolutely.
caffeine? Or
Absolutely.
Yeah. But the body wouldn't filter it. It would.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Where are we with time?
Even during pregnancy as well. I mean, definitely limited, but.
You know what's amazing is that,
It's 555.
okay, yeah, so I'm gonna add a few more things. What is so amazing is that there's such an intelligence to the creation of life. And so, for instance, there's nothing that crosses the barrier to the fetus in like the first 3 months. I won't say nothing, but most things don't. I'm sure there might be drugs and things out there that do, so I won't say nothing. But in a natural world, a mother may not know she's pregnant, right? Until like 3 months in, and she could be drinking alcohol and smoking cigarettes and not eating well, and there's a protection that's happening there. So that's pretty amazing. On the flip side of that, they say that the first child of every family will get all the chemical download, right? So this was something I wanted to bring up. You were referring to the cleansing, helping couples cleanse, before they
Their
conceive.
firstborn, especially.
Yeah, and especially the first one. Like when there was a campaign against breast milk, they would say, well, the breast milk, would contain all the contaminants and therefore it's not good for the baby. And while that's true, having a clean diet, cleaning your body beforehand is going to avoid all that. And the benefits that are coming through the breast milk would far outweigh anything that you're going to get from formula. And what's to say that the formula isn't loaded with chemicals? We don't even know what's in
It
it.
is, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff that the doctors want to push as some good alternative is appalling. And there needs to be way more testing done on that, because that's just
Well,
ridiculous.
they're just taking the power out of, they're disempowered. So they're
Not to
dependent
mention the
on system.
connection.
Yeah.
The connection of being held and breastfed. There's nothing more primal and human. And to think, this is why we're in such a mess, is like reductive science thinks it knows more than the natural intelligence of nature. And there's a reason that a woman can make a baby, push out a baby, and feed a baby. it's not, you know, like we're learning that like there's important things that happen to the baby's immune system as it goes through the birth canal, and it's getting all those bacteria that are living in the womb and in the birth canal, and then, you know, the things that the mother's producing that are, you know, going into the baby in terms of immunity. I mean, you know, they're finally started acknowledging that stuff in the scientific world, where like other cultures are just like, what is wrong with you people? Like, why would you even question that? Why would you even question that? And I mean, I'll just say on a personal note, like I was born in '68. Dr. Spock was like the god of guru. I don't know how he got there, and I actually need to read the book so I can understand my own birth trauma. But my mom and most of the women in that time period felt that part of women's liberation was to not have to breastfeed. And so I knew that. I knew I wasn't breastfed as a child and this and that. And when I nursed my own children, oh my, the deep, deep trauma that emerged in me emotionally by recognizing that I was denied that, and how much my children needed, like, it was the antidote for anything. Oh, you're unhappy? Here. And then they're like, you know, and just to see that for their dad and I both, like, we both were just like, wow, we were deprived of that. We would just sit there and cry because we could just see like how comforting and necessary that was, right? So now you take a situation where the mother's milk is causing problems for that baby, and they don't understand why. They're just eating pizza and lasagna and chicken soup and all the stuff that's being brought to them, and this baby's not digesting the milk. It's interfering, you know what I mean? Like, now this baby has an association with pain after it's fed. I mean, that could set a person up for a lifetime of digestive disorders. You know, so here we get to eliminate that. We get to just eliminate that in just 6 weeks of some conscious awareness and care. It's profound and beautiful, you know, it's so incredible, really. Yeah, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, I'm curious about if a woman like is like, you know, that a common problem that I've heard is just like not being able to produce milk, right?
Yeah.
Like, have you experienced someone who wasn't able to run into that issue, and like through using these protocols and whatnot, that it's like, oh no, there was just an imbalance and here it is?
Oh, definitely. There are definite situations where a woman can't breastfeed. And I tend to think a lot of those are psychological. There's sometimes there's something that happens with the mouth where the baby's not latching on right, and they have to actually like alter the baby's mouth. Sometimes the mother just has so much, maybe her own birth trauma from not being nursed, or like a vanity about it. It's painful. It's painful. It's some of the most pain I've ever been through in terms of like having my nipples bit, having them crack, just the engorgement of milk. I mean, there's so much in there, and it's really like person by person. One of the protocols that we use is a tea called fennel and fenugreek seed together in a particular ratio that will bring in milk flow. So usually if there's a problem with nursing, it's not due to a lack of being able to get the milk flow. There's other things going on there where the mother's just too frustrated or having a hard time, or the baby's not latching properly, or, you know, there's a lot of things. So the one thing I'm just gonna say, and then in completion, is this idea of preparing for conception. And I know you guys are really, you know, aware of that. So in Ayurveda, you have what's called your prakruti and your vakruti. Your prakruti is the balance of the elements in your body at the time of your birth. And what dictates your Prakruti is what the elements were doing in the parent's body at the time of conception, the time of year that they conceived, the climate that they conceived in, so the season and the weather, and what was happening in their bodies at the time of sperm and egg. All of those factors are what created your personal elemental balance, okay? Vakruti is what becomes of those elements due to your lifestyle. So we all tend to get caught up in patterns, and those patterns very often are not nurturing what our original constitution was. And now the elements, as you know, are incredibly powerful. You can't stop a hurricane, you can't stop a wildfire, you can't stop a tsunami. I mean, now they've got fire retardant and this and that, but in general, when an element wants to blaze out of balance, it's gonna blaze out of balance, and it will do everything to stay dominant. So when it comes to Vata, you try to take somebody who's, like, this would be a typical scenario. You have somebody who's dominantly Vata. They tend to wanna not settle down. They have no, they might meditate, but it might be at any point, at any time. There's no real, like, I wake up at 4 and meditate kind of thing. And they're gonna be like your raw foodist. And they're gonna swear by it, you know? And, like, you can see that that Vata dosha is just driving the lifestyle. You know, a Pitta person, they're gonna eat spicy food with every friggin' meal. They're gonna exercise in the heat of the sun, super hard, no matter what, any weather. They're gonna go take that run, and they're the ones running in the heat of the summer on the black, like going for it. They're muscular, they got a pile of books by their bed because they just can't turn off their mind. They just wanna learn. You know, and they can get like really easily angry, and they have a judgment about everything, and you know, and then you might have a Kapha person who just like isn't gonna get off the couch. They're just super like lazy and depressed. They just want to eat bonbons and watch sad romantic movies, and these are extremes, right? These are extremes of the element out of balance, keeping that person out of balance, right? And it's very hard to move out of that. So like very often I would give the Abhyanga to people, and they're like, oh my God, I just want to go to sleep. And I'm like, that's exactly right. You're not going to get up and go run around. You're going to go to sleep. You're going to go home, take a hot bath, have something warm, and go to sleep. And you'll run into, you know, the resistance, and you really just have to keep. So the beautiful thing about the Abhyanga is that it helps the mom stay home for 42 days because she thinks she's ready. I've had this so many times. Moms are like, I'm restless, I'm ready to get out, I want to go introduce my baby, and I'm like, that's cool, let me give you this treatment. You know, and I give them the treatment, and they're like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. And I'm like, yes, you're not able to override it with like Vata Pitta. You need to relax, and then it really helps. So yeah, so just I jumped tracks. The thing of preparing, having a conscious preparation for birth is a beautiful gift that Ayurveda gives us. Because the parents can do panchakarma, which we'll talk about another time, where the body is not only getting cleansed of toxins, but it's bringing you back from your Vakruti, which is what your body is doing as a result of your lifestyle, to your Prakruti, which is what your elements were at birth. And when two parents are coming together and their Prakrutis are balanced, they're giving that baby an opportunity to have a very strong constitution. And especially when you start plotting it with the time of year you're gonna conceive,
Mhm.
what you're doing in the weather. So an easy one is, let's say you've got two parents and they're all pitted out. They're fired up, they're passionate, they're just always doing stuff, and they have sex in the summer, and they have it outside in the sun, and then they get into the hot tub, and they go to a sweat lodge, or, and they're just eating spicy food. Well, guess what? You're likely to create a pitta baby, and that baby's gonna scream a lot because they want it the way they want it. And there's no negotiating. And until they can talk and tell you what that is, they're gonna be yelling at you a lot. And then they might get rashy, and they might, just bite. And, all these things that are pitta. They might be more angry as children than I'm just throwing out like extreme examples so that you get the understanding of like how the different elements are gonna express themselves. So yes, there is this beautiful opportunity to give a baby a very strong constitution by doing some very specific Ayurvedic practices that can give this baby a really strong constitution. And people that have a more balanced constitution are very resilient to sickness. It's amazing. They'll get thrown off, but they come right back. They don't end up with a lot of chronic issues. So it's really hopeful, especially in these times, to know that there's that. And yes, it could be a little complicated, and it's hard to get it just perfect. And then the last thing I'm going to say is to realize that your prakruti, or your goal in balancing, does not mean that you're trying to be equal vata, pitta, kapha. Your prakruti is whatever you were at birth, and you're looking to get back to your own specific balance. And a good Ayurvedic practitioner will take your pulse and tell you what that is. I can sometimes do that. I learned pulse diagnosis, and I can sometimes feel it, sometimes people elude me. And typically it's vata and pitta that's out of balance because of our lifestyle. Yeah. All right.